Hey guys, Ollie here, and welcome back to ManyMotion. On today's video, I'm going to be introducing the Ipi tests that I'm going to be doing. So we're going to be looking at what Ipisoft actually is, we're going to be looking at my test schedule, and we're also going to be looking at what equipment I take whenever I go to do a motion capture shoot. So, let's get started. So to start off, what is Ipisoft? Ipisoft is a markerless motion capture solution. Now what does that actually mean? Traditionally in motion capture, you would normally see suits with these little dots on, and specifically made cameras that can pick up these dots. It's by taking this data and putting it into 3D space that you can then take it into other pieces of software in order to clean up and do things like creating bones between points to keep them together and sturdy, and things like that. It is this data which eventually gets put onto a skeleton, and then eventually that skeleton gets put onto a character. What makes Ipi different is that it uses consumer grade cameras and doesn't need any markers on any suit or anything really. Ipisoft is able to be used with webcams, PlayStation Eyes is another one that they recommend, and the Kinect as well. There are some slight differences between how you would go about capturing with the Kinect over capturing with a PlayStation Eye, but for the Ipi test that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be focusing on doing for PlayStation Eyes. From what I can tell, essentially how it does what it does is it picks up a background image that you set, and then as you walk into frame, it notices obviously in the image that something is different, and then correlating the pieces of information that it's getting from 4 cameras or 3 cameras or even 6 cameras, it puts that image into 3D space and aligns a skeleton with it. So when you track forward on something, if your arm starts moving up, it's moving up in 4 different cameras. So it's able to see that your arm is moving up and moves the skeleton accordingly. If you want to go and read up a little bit more on Ipisoft, because I don't know if I really do it justice, you can go to www.ipisoft.com. You can go onto the forums and see what people are doing. Some people are doing some really amazing stuff with it. Or you can just go and have a look and browse on the main pages and see what different editions are available and how much all this stuff would cost. So getting onto the testing schedule, I said before that I'm using 4 PlayStation Eyes. Now, Ipisoft will allow for 3 PlayStation Eyes, 4 PlayStation Eyes, and 6 PlayStation Eyes, I think. I'm not sure if 5 is available. I'm not sure if they will do that. But the reason I'm using 4 is because I've used 4 in the past, and from using 4 as a baseline, it's kind of slap bang in the middle. So you can either see from the tests that, alright, if I take a camera away, I might get a little bit less results. I might not be able to get as good a data. Likewise, you can think to yourself, if I add 2 more cameras, then surely this data is going to get a lot better. I'm going to be able to see a lot more. So I thought going for 4 was the best way to do it. I will be doing some tests with the Kinect in the future, but for the moment I'm just going to be focusing on 4 PlayStation Eyes, and then I'll move on to the Kinect after I've done quite a substantial amount of testing with those. So what is the test schedule? So there's 3 major parts of the test schedule that I've set up for myself. The first one is camera setups. Now, you can obviously set up cameras in different ways, different heights, different positions. The Ipi website kind of documents a half moon style and a full 360 degree style. So we're going to be testing with, say, different heights, different positions of those cameras to see which gives us the best camera setup. And we'll go a little bit more into detail on that on the camera setup video. The next test I'm going to be doing is calibration. Now, I know what some people might be thinking, surely you want to do your calibration tests before you do your camera setup tests. I did think about this, don't worry. So I was thinking of doing a 5-minute calibration video, a 7-minute calibration video, and a 10-minute calibration video. And if you add all that up, that comes to, a good 20 minutes. So putting 20 minutes into every single setup is quite a lengthy process. So I've decided to go for a shorter calibration process for the setup video, just to see how well different setups can handle it, how well different setups can clean up data without me having too much of an influence on the tracking at that point. And the last part of the schedule is going to be clothing options. So we're going to be testing different clothes, what works well in my capture space, which could technically transpose into different capture spaces. So if there's a really light floor, should you be wearing light shoes or dark shoes? May sound like a bit of a no-brainer to use dark shoes, but we're going to test it anyway. So that's the test schedule. There's going to be more tests after that. They will probably be smaller ones. And I've got a few ideas of what I want to do for that. So let's get onto equipment anyway. I always take a big bag with me, which is like my mocap bag, which has all my stuff in the back. I think it's always good to have that bag lying around that you can always just pick up and go with. First and most important thing in my bag is my PlayStation Eyes, obviously. Now you can use other webcams, and I suggest going onto the Ipi forums and asking about different brands of webcams and seeing if anyone can give you any advice on that. But the reason I use the PlayStation Eyes is because it's recommended on the Ipisoft website for one. And I can honestly see that if you're using a higher grade webcam, something that can push a lot more pixels, say, potentially you're going to have a much better rig in order to push that. Now, I can push around about 40 Hz without dropping any frames, and if I go up to 50 I start dropping a couple of frames. But when it comes to cleanup, those couple of frames could be very problematic in a complex motion. I don't want to drop any frames, I want to try and keep it as consistent as possible. So the PlayStation Eyes anyway are quite important to the whole process, let's say. The next important thing is tripods. Now, depending on whether you've got a dedicated capture space or if you're going to a different location in order to do your capture, I always like to have tripods at hand just in case. I know a lot of people have capture spaces where they can set them up on walls and stuff, and they never have to move for eternity and they can just stay there. I don't have that luxury, unfortunately. I have to take my stuff to a room and set it up and then take it all back down and then go home. So tripods are important in that. It's always nice to be able to move your cameras away from the wall as much as you want and kind of position them depending on circumstances. Like recently I had one of my cables break, and if I was relying on it being on a wall or something, then the cable would not have been able to have stretched as far as the wall. So thankfully with my tripod there I was able to maintain a height, but it had to just be moved in a little bit closer. On top of that, two of really important items for me are brown parcel tape / gaffer tape and scissors. Whenever I set up for a shoot, I always tape my cameras to the top of my tripods. It's really important that the cameras don't move during the shoot, so I like to make sure that my cameras are very firm and secure on the actual tripod. The scissors part is just because after countless times of turning up and having to use my teeth to rip tape which goes through me, and at the end of a shoot having to like peel off tape from the side of a tripod and then do this, and then it breaks, and then you need to start peeling again. Just take a pair of scissors, it just makes so much sense. The next big thing I take with me is a tape measure. Now, Ipisoft does a really good job of figuring out your camera heights and exactly where they're positioned, but it doesn't hurt to take down notes of how high you actually are setting your cameras, as well as the distance between camera 1 and camera 2. So I always bring a tape measure with me just to record those heights, and I normally just type it into a notepad file or something and then save it, so when I get back home and I'm calibrating all the data and whatnot, I can always cross-reference those heights. Another really important thing is active USB cables. Now this depends on how large the capture area is that you've got to work with. In my case, my capture area is around about 8 meters by 8 meters. So what an active USB cable does is it pushes the signal that amount of distance. It pushes it all the way to the back of the room. Whereas with a normal USB cable you would have signal loss over that amount of distance. An active USB cable keeps that signal consistent. So over those large distances your cameras are still going to work and you're still going to be able to receive that data. I currently had one of my active USB cables die, so I'm currently on 2. But it's always good to have spares. I'm going to be ordering some very soon. The next very important piece of equipment is to bring a Maglite. This is more for PlayStation eyes, really. But without a Maglite, you are not going to be able to do your calibration. Now, other people do use things other than Maglites. You just got to find something that works for you. The Ipi website suggests a Maglite, and I cannot suggest it more. The Maglite has never let me down. It does calibration really well, and if I turned up to a shoot without my Maglite, I honestly think I'd have to pack up, or I'd have to find a Maglite there and then. So just always make sure that if you're going to go and do a shoot for the first time and whatnot, make sure you have your Maglite or something similar packed in your bag. If you are going to get a Maglite, make sure that you get one which has candle mode, which is basically unscrewing the top of the head of the Maglite and it just reveals the bulb. So it's bright enough to be picked up by Ipisoft. Another less important thing that I always like to have in my bag is clothing options. Now, I always use the same capture space, but I always like to have something just a little bit different just in case. We will be going into clothing tests on the third video, but for tests that I've done previously, I always like to have just a few different clothing options. So if you're doing a shoot, for example, and you don't quite know what the actual room is like or what the area is like, you could potentially turn up wearing green shoes and then realize that the place that you're doing a capture for has a green floor. Now, there will be a difference in the green, obviously, and Ipisoft will do a really good job of being able to pick up where your shoes are because of the skeleton. But, you know, if you had a black pair of shoes, that might not be a bad idea. But we'll get onto that in the clothing video anyway. Me personally, I just like to have a few different tops, a few different trousers, and a few different pairs of shoes. And the last important thing that I have in my bag is markers. This isn't markers as in like suit markers. Basically, whenever I'm trying to find where the sweet spot is for my my test or my my mocap video, I start walking towards a camera and then wait until my feet go off the bottom of the frame and then take a few steps back and place down a marker on the floor. After I've done this 4 times with each of the cameras, I'm normally left with a square 4 markers of where my feet would actually start going out of frame on those particular cameras. It's then in the middle of this place, which is, I think at least, the sweet spot for my motion capture. So I normally have something in my bag that I can just place down the floor. You could technically use like pennies or something like that, but once you've got these markers down, you could always use your gaffer tape or your brown parcel tape to just lay X's on the floor, just so you know where the corners of your capture space are actually going to be. The only reason I say markers is because, say you're doing a shoot outside, you might not be able to gaffer tape like gravel or something, so something that just represents where the corners of your capture space are going to be. And the last most important thing to take with you, which I cannot fit in my bag unfortunately because it would be brilliant if I could, is my PC. Now my PC is around about a year old, but when it was bought a year ago it was relatively current. I can do around about 40 Hz with 4 PlayStation eyes without dropping frames. 50 I start to drop frames, so I normally drop it back down to 40. The PC is also a great tool for stuff other than actually doing the recording, so I always like to use my PC to keep notes on. If I can get an internet connection, I normally do stuff on Google Drive. So if anything does happen with the PC, like the power comes out or something, I've always got that document backed up. There's been 1 or 2 instances when I've been taking down data for the heights of cameras and stuff and just been in the middle of a calibration and then someone accidentally walks and knocks a wire and then the PC goes off. So yeah, it's a little bit disheartening, but it's always good to have that information that you've typed up once saved somewhere as opposed to it being lost because you didn't save it in a notepad format. You could always use like a pen and paper to record all the heights and whatnot, but I often lose pieces of paper in the journey home and whatnot, just stuffing it in a bag or something. So I always like to use my PC for note taking. So yeah, I think that's everything for my equipment. Hopefully this has been of some use to someone who's thinking about doing a capture and not exactly sure what to take with them. If you have any questions about my equipment or any questions about differences in equipment, like what you should take or what you shouldn't take, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to try and help. So just a little last word about the tests. I'd like to say that this is the first time I've actually tried to do something like this in a scientific way, kind of. So I'm trying to not change as many variables as possible. I'm trying to keep it consistent. Also, I would like to point out that I am by no means a pro at this. I'm trying to figure it out. So if anyone has any suggestions in the next couple of videos that I'm going to be doing about what to change or what to do differently, or anything, just comments, anything that may potentially help in me getting a better capture out of all of this, then please let me know. I would love to know what people think. With that said then, I hope you enjoy the test videos which are going to be coming out over the next week or so, 2 weeks, something like that. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.